event is not designed as a broadcast. We hope you'll all take part in the conversation. This is an interesting topic, and quite a few of my colleagues from CCC are also on the call, but please don't expect them to do the talking. We want to hear from you all. We are recording it so that we can share with many others who couldn't make it today, and also those who like to listen in their own time and space. Jonathan, please take it away.
Thank you very much, Andrew. So just to let you know what to expect in the next hour and a quarter or so, we're at the welcome and introduction right now. In a moment, I'm going to ask each of our panelists to make some opening words, opening statements, and then we're going to have a very quick breakout session. We've arranged some breakouts. We'll push you all into a breakout, and I'll talk about that when the time comes, and then we'll bring it back for questions and plenary discussion, and that's it. And it should, as I said, should take about an hour and 7 minutes from now. Okay, so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Tatiana Kairulina. She works for Outsell. I'm sure many of you know Outsell. They provide advice, analysis, market intelligence, and Tatiana is the consulting partner there, particularly focused on standards and technical solutions. So Tatiana, I'll let you introduce yourself further, and please go ahead. I have a slide waiting.
Great. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for the intro and for the invitation to be here. I am looking forward to the discussion. The question of workflows and standards is very, very topical. But to get us started, I thought I would provide a little bit of context. So standards reside in the realm of engineering solutions, but more specifically in the information data and analytics part of that. And it's a large realm. Besides standards, information data and analytics as engineering solutions include also technical reference, include academic research in conferences and all the proceedings of conferences. It also includes just general industry news, industry updates, education, events, and any community or forums that engineers visit in the course of the day. And also it includes tools, which could be Discovery Insight or Analytics, which is content-based and tied to a specific type of content, or it could be content independent or content agnostic design or workflow tools. So there's quite a variety of information data analytics sources that engineers use on a daily basis. And that market is changing rapidly as engineering is moving from the physical realm to the digital realm. It's changing, and it has three mega sources of influence before I get to the specific engineering solutions trends. And the first mega source is, of course, the market of engineering solutions is being transformed by the trends reshaping the industries it's serving. The common change factor for the industries is the acceleration and increasing pace of technological advancement, boosting the speed of product design, boosting the speed of product development, the speed of R&D, and also the level of product and process complexity. That's kind of horizontal across all domains. The second mega influence is the new reality of remote engineering. We already referred to it. It has been cemented by the ongoing pandemic. And what it means really is an increased need for efficient remote collaboration, very often across time zones, across geographies, across partners, and also growing reliance on software-based solutions such as virtual prototyping. And finally, the third mega trend, or mega source of influence, it's the larger trends in the overall digital publishing space, which is the concepts of content and data are converging, and new formats become more dominant. Video, audio, reproducible data is becoming more and more important. That means reproducible code or just interactive data feeds, data pipelines. So with that, with these mega trends, we have also identified the top trends in engineering solutions that you have in front of you on your screens right now. We believe these trends are important for engineering solutions vendors, information providers, to keep in mind and reference, because they really stretch across domains, and they're very important for vendors to respond to in order to future-proof their businesses. Starting with the first one, embrace of smart data. Really, we live in an interesting time when engineering solutions run the gamut from paper-based to the distributed realm of the metaverse, the newest, with every conceivable digital format in between. So leading providers of engineering solutions do recognize that. And they also recognize that they really need to support their customers in the transition to the industry that relies more and more on smart and autonomous systems that run on data and utilize machine learning, which is also known as Industry 4.0. So in recognizing that, really, the leading providers of engineering solutions, they aim to support their customers in utilizing the data that's available to them in an optimal way. The data could be internally sourced or it could be externally sourced. And really depends, optimal way of utilizing the data depends on the level of technological maturity of their clients, of their customer companies, because they're all at a different phase of transition to Industry 4.0. And for some companies, optimizing their data could mean eliminating some internal silos, and that would represent a huge leap forward. And some customers are already looking for the next generation of smart standards to incorporate in their engineering pipelines. So that's our embrace of smart data as a trend. Building focused value verticals. That's something new that we wanted to bring to your attention. And we wanted to kind of highlight in opposition to the common concept of building value chains. It's true that data-driven R&D implies the creation of a digital thread that sort of connects or goes through the life of a product development from the inception to the commercialization and probably further downstream into operations and maintenance. And it does appear logical to create a value chain along the R&D continuum, but it's also quite overwhelming for most players. So what we have observed in the market is that creating value verticals within the silos, functional silos, the keyword being functional, that already exist along the R&D continuum will bring a more immediate research and return on investment, more immediate practical value, while the creation of that overall value chain that connects everything to everything is still a go in the future. Appetite for emerging workflow and content, closer to the topic of our conversation here. What we have observed is that pure play content vendors in the marketplace, they see more and more overlap between their respective portfolios and more opportunity to incorporate niche value add products into their portfolios. Historically, engineering solution content vendors have seen an advantage of staying really flexible in terms of format and kind of allowing their customers to take it away further down the line and incorporate that content in whatever shape they want into the variety of workflows that exist in the marketplace. Because the truth is, the workflows can range from cutting edge to archaic. With the growing reliance on data, though, content vendors do find niche opportunities to provide solutions to address specific market needs for specific customers in collaboration with leading software vendors. And conversely, we have also observed pure play software vendors showing an interest in incorporating content-based solutions into their portfolios. So we see it as a growing trend. It's not very large right now. This is why we kind of indicated that there is an appetite for emerging workflow and content. Hyper-personalized solutions. That is going back to the overall trends driving the digital publishing space, and to the fact that we are facing a new generation of users coming on the scene. And also recognition of the fact that practicing engineers exhibit a high variability in terms of their needs as users, depending on industry, company size, and role. So in the past, historically, the way to address this was to create a collection vast enough to satisfy the plurality of needs. with the new users coming on the scene, new users accustomed to a more sophisticated delivery of digital content, this may not work in the long run any longer. So the market is developing an appetite for more curated and more focused collections and really more specific hyper-personalized solutions. And finally, the gap between the data needs of users and capabilities of information providers is widening. The gap has existed for a long time. Those who are in this market have recognized it for quite a while right now. What is changing at the moment is really the availability of publicly available data and information that allows users to fill that gap. So what I mean by that, since the discrepancy has existed for a while, to adapt and address the discrepancy, the leading enterprises have created in-house solutions. And for many of them, this is just part of their R&D process. This is the way they create their IP. This is totally normal and expected. But also part of that was created in response to market inadequacies, essentially. Cybersecurity remains a concern, which also prompts leading enterprises to create in homegrown data solutions. So as a result, while most leading engineering companies do use external data and content, they also have alternative sources generated in-house, both for their data needs and for their software needs. Engineering solutions providers just need to recognize that as a fact, as a risk to their offerings, and seek to address it in their future products and services. Okay, so with that, these are my top trends in engineering solution space. I will hand it over to Jonathan.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. Let me just get the next slide on. I can't. Okay, thank you very much, Tatiana. That was excellent. A great kickoff. I'd like to hand over now to Cord Wischhofer. He works for DIN Software. I'm sure DIN needs no introduction to you. DIN Software, maybe. I'll let Cord do that for you. So Cord, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, hello, I'm Cord. I'm Cord from DIN Software. We are a subsidiary company of the German Institute for Standardization, and we are mainly dealing with working with metadata databases from which we draw products and services for our users, mainly in the German industry, but also in some international contexts. And we're also a company which manages all the XML content with which DIN, the DIN group of companies, uses to create products. So we are basically content and metadata provider for users in industry and other areas. The trends which Tatiana has dwelled upon and has shown us very much depend upon the content you can get and the kind of content you can get for the use in company internal systems, for example. So Jonathan, if you could maybe go to the next slide, if that's possible. Thank you. This is a slide which we have been using in the world of ISO, the International Organization for Standardization, and the IEC, the International Electrotechnical Commission, both well-known standardization bodies who work on the international level together with national members, like, for example, DIN in Germany. A slide which shows the different levels of utility which standards used to have in the past and still have today, and will probably be having in the future when we talk about services or solutions which Tatiana has touched upon, where standards content, for example, as one part of the data you have been referring to, will be transferred perhaps directly from the standard, be it a document or be it a database format, into some customer systems via some services. And all different interesting questions arise, which I will come to later. But when we look at these levels of utility, as we call them, or sometimes we also call them level of maturity of the standards content, you will see that until a few years ago, well, 20 years ago, let's put it this way, or 25 years ago, people were mainly using paper standards. Engineers were reading their stuff and somehow it was used. Then we slowly shifted over to machine display documents like PDFs, where at least you could see it on the screen, so it was easily viewable. Like you could store it more easily, you could bookmark things, but you couldn't really use the content. So this was basically still a relatively dumb document. The level we have reached now in many organizations which deal with standards publication is that we have machine readable documents, as we call them. So basically XML structured documents based on the NISO standard tag suite for standards developed by the National Information Standards Organization in the US, in a cooperation between mainly European standards bodies and American STOs, where we agreed on a common XML format for the publication of standards. But this XML format is still rather dumb, if I may say it this way. It's very much document oriented. It tells you that this is a paragraph, and it tells you that this is a normative reference maybe, but it doesn't really tell you much about the content. So the content is still machine readable, but not good, easily identifiable. So for more sophisticated solutions where people want to access the content of a standard, not the whole document, but maybe some parts of the standard, we envisage level 3, the machine readable content, and that's where we are moving to at the moment in the world of ISO and IEC, where you have where you can identify certain elements and standards of which we know that they are relevant for user applications in industry, for example. We being German, we mainly talk about industry, but it also refers to other branches of the economy as well. So incorporating requirements from standards into your requirements management system, or material properties, or some testing procedures, which are all given in standards, but which are not intelligently marked at the moment. There's no markup for that, really. So what this means is that at the moment, users will have to copy and paste stuff from standards and include it into their own systems if they want to use it. We hope to address these shortcomings with the level 3 standards, as we call them, machine readable content, where some of the items in the standard are identifiable automatically, and you can semi-automatically or manually automatically transfer stuff into your requirements management system, for example, or where we can offer services to customers saying, we can give you all the requirements from certain standards, and you can incorporate these into your own system. So we're moving there. Presently, the groundwork for that is laying, and I'll come to that in my next slide, which doesn't come up yet, Jonathan. The next level, which we see then in a later point in time, and which our customers and industry are also pointing out to us as an important goal we should reach, is that the content should be as intelligent and maybe not document format, and not anymore in a document format, but maybe more in a database format, where standards content can be queried by the systems, for example, of our users. So we don't sell them documents or data deliveries anymore. We just give them APIs, and they take the information from the standards content, which they use, and which is supported by more intelligent search engines, which can then maybe answer questions which a user may have to a number of 10 or 20,000 documents in the DIN standards world, for example. So a level 4 where we think that the communication between a user system and the standards maker systems will be semi-automated or automated via APIs. And the content will be not addressed as a single document, perhaps, but in the form that we look at the whole of the standards and we get the right answer for the right question just in time for those who need it. Of course, that's very difficult to achieve. We are working on the ground technologies for that, but that's the way we are thinking, because that's what we hear as the vision for 2030 from many of our customers, for example. Jonathan, could you maybe give me the next slide? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So what does it mean? What does it mean on when we look at not at the utility, but we look at the way standards need to be structured, or standards databases need to be structured, and what the content should look like in order to be used more flexibly in individual solutions for customers. Let's not talk about level 0, TXT, PDF, and not level 1. This is the present state of the art, and it's going to remain very important for many of our users still, because PDF will be around for a long time and human readers will still read it. And not everybody will move to data-centric uses of standards content. There will still be people who want to read the standard, who just want to keep a PDF for a long time. But where we are at the moment is the section, level 2 section-centric or paragraph-centric approach in standards, where we, using NISO STS, have tagged everything nicely as a document, and you can identify paragraphs. And that's the basic state of the art for many of the standards providers at the moment, standards developers. And we're moving in a time frame of about maybe 2024 to level 3, where we have sentence or provision-centric tagging in the standard. So where we can say, this is a requirement, it starts here and it ends here, and you can import it into your system. Or this is a material property which is important for the construction of something, you can then use it. So that means that we are moving to a more granular tagging of content in standards, and developing the information model for that is also very important. And with this level 3, we hope that many or some of the present day applications in industry can be serviced with meaningful information from standards in a semi-automatic way, which will make life for many engineers easier, because they won't need so much time to search for things anymore, because they will find things which can be of help for them. And the next step, level 4, is a little further away, but we're also working on that, is that we probably will be seeing some of the standards moving away from a purely document type of standard to more database versions, where most of the content or much of the content will then be available in different formats than XML or other textual representations, but where much of the content will be available either in libraries or in databases, and can be queried automatically or semi-automatically. And we call that the data-centric approach, where standards will dissolve in a certain amount, at least, or some of them will, into databases which can be queried and which can be used as the basis for user information and usage in the company. And that's, of course, one of the preconditions for very individualized services, which standards providers or standards users can then apply. And with that said, I think I'm basically through my slides. I just wanted to give you the idea how within the ISO and IEC world and the associated national standards bodies, we are trying to develop the level of utility of our standards and the level of granularity in the standards in a way that makes it possible for users and for sellers of standards to provide more intelligent solutions, which are based on 100% reliable information, because that's always the thing with standards. Info has to be 100% correct. Everybody expects that from you. So 90% is not good enough. So that's why we spend so much energy and time on providing good data models, high quality data, and making it usable in a reliable way in future and present applications. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Cord. That's fantastic. So just before we go to our final speaker, just a call out for the chat. If you have any questions or comments, then please use the chat. You'll also see that the chat's been used to broadcast. I think Todd posted a link to the NISO STS, which is behind some of the things that Cord mentioned. So please go to the chat. If you do have questions, put them in. And we're just up to Simon. Simon, are you there?
I am, yes.
Fantastic. Oh,
Sorry
over to
about
you
the
for our
slight
final.
lateness.
No problem. Please go ahead.
Right. I'm sorry I was late. I don't think I got all of Tatjana's slide, but you talked about the metaverse, and what I am hearing when you're saying that is the entire ecosystem that is standard development, publishing, and users and all that. Is that correct?
I was referring more to the fashionable industrial metaverse, but right. What you're talking about is the ecosystem of the various sort of sources and inputs of information, data, and analytics that engineers are using on a daily basis. So both concepts are true, and both were included sort of in my presentation.
Right. So yeah. So that's the R&D continuum you talked about. Basically, is the ecosystem, right? Okay, I see that. I saw that as a standard development issue. That was kind of difficult to see through. Anyway, it's quite simple. This doesn't have to be very complex. The more complex this whole system becomes, the more standard publishers will just simply fall off and do their own thing. I think this is about stakeholder cooperations. We need to talk together. We need to traverse the barriers that the users and developers and publishers are confronted with on a daily basis. Simply talk together, grow the relations between all the stakeholders in the market, and I know that's already happening on the publisher side, and that's great. But there is a user side that is not being heard, because I love the Quartz granulated approach, and I think that is a great new way to think standard development and the whole process into publishing standards as a database sort of issue. And you probably aware of this also, Kurt. The market is quite different now, and there's a maturity on the user side that is not there. So it's still document centric. It's very much still papers based, and I mean, we're sort of a stone age trying to in this area. This whole market is very stone age on a data level, and we're trying to make it more like Google, basically. And I don't think that's the right approach, and maybe in 20 years. But at this point in time, I think we need to just make the time to talk together and create cooperations across organizations, across publishers and users, and middlemen like agents and aggregators and stuff like that, trying to make things work, make the packages and the content available to everybody. I think that's the real issue here, is that the users often meet blockages that is either copyright related or actually procurement related. So it's difficult to procure and license the correct documents. And I know this is a bit of a different angle than you two have talked about. I'm very user oriented because that's what I work with on a daily basis. So it's about simplicity. It's about ease of access. It's about a learning market that is very slowly learning, and we can talk about data granulated data access. I think it's great, and some have done it. And if you look at the ESME BPVC advanced portal, I think that's a great step in the right direction. And what you're doing, Cord, it's very commendable, and I think it's a leap. I'm just not sure that the market is ready for it. We're not, that's for sure. We still have a lot of paper going on, and I think that's where we're at. We're at simply creating the interconnectivity between publishers and us, and we have to do that with a middleman to be able to create basically a single point of access. That is the main concern we're working with, and the one thing we're trying to create as a company. We have 16,000 users in our company, and we're trying to create a space where people can actually get to the content, access it, find it, all that nasty things about users. I mean, they are quite demanding, I know, but really it's about ease of access, and it's about creating those pathways in an easy way, and easy licensing, and be able to align these. And I mean, that's about relations, isn't it? It's about talking to each other. It's about looking at the user rights across different publishers, and creating that communication and that alignment. I think that would be what is best. I mean, that could just I can see a common approach, a more holistic approach to standardization that goes across development, publishing, aggregating, and uses sort of a go-through communication that will, I don't know, if make a project or whatever. I don't have any solutions here, but I know it's where the blockage is about the end user having a difficulty getting a hold of what he needs to be able to do his job, basically. And I mean, that's an issue. And we have people in Remble that, like me and my colleagues, we're helping our company to do this, and many others, like smaller companies or even other big companies, they don't have people like us doing this work, and it becomes very ad hoc, and then it becomes basically paper trails, or it becomes very discompliant behavioral patterns we see emerging, and not everybody wishes or see the problem in not combating these discompliant behaviors, like creating own databases with illegal copyright, user right licenses, and old licenses that is invalid and stuff like. So that's the issues I work with. That's what I'm trying to solve, and I think that is that takes the whole market, that takes the whole ecosystem talking together, being open for new ideas. And I think in those ideas and in those communications, we will reach the top of enlightenment, if you get my point. Like Court's granulated approach, I think that is a great idea. I think that's applicable in almost all standard development organizations, and to be especially in the communication between publisher and development. I think, and in some cases, like Dean, you have separated publishing and development. In other cases, publishers and developers are the same people, same organization. So it's very different. It's a granulated market also. So it might be a good idea with a granulated approach. So I mean, and these new ideas, they emerge much better when we talk together, in the whole ecosystem, because I mean, nobody knows everything about themselves, right? So even if you take Google, like a million people organization, all the best knowledge is still outside. So I mean, there's a value in working together, and that value can be, I mean, if it has to be everybody or nobody, basically, because you can't have 10 organizations working together on creating a solutions. So it has to be everybody's welcome, and we'll try to be inclusive. That's the whole issue here. So I don't know what I'm proposing. I'm not proposing anything really. I see some problems. The solutions are there. The components are there. I also see that as a difficulty explaining the needs of the users to the publishers, and sometimes we have to go through the aggregators as well. So it becomes an extra point of miscommunication and misunderstanding. And I mean, we can't have in Remble. We have a holistic service. We advise on everything, basically. So we need standards from all over the world. We need all standard developers. We need access to everything. all the time. And if that has to be on a document level, on a single user level, that is just massive. That's a job nobody can control. So, I mean, there has to be a better way to do this. And I think by talking about alignment of user and copyright, I think the ideas will emerge that can create a more solid workflow all through the ecosystem and benefit the user in the end. Because, I mean, what is all this for? It's for basically for creating a better world, right? Standards is for creating a better world. It seems to be there's some blockages we need to take care of, and I have no idea how to do this, but we need to take care of it. So yeah,
Right.
And there is
Thank
a
you, Simon.
necessity of agents and aggregators that seems to be hard to understand, but the whole single point of access is very important for the user to be able to search and find quite fast and easy. Right, so that's it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Simon. So we've heard from our three panelists. We're going to go for a quick 10-minute breakout. Just before I do, I wanted to highlight a few things. So we heard from Tatjana about her megatrends, the megatrends in the market, hyper-personalization. There was a couple of questions on that, which we'll come to in a bit later. She talked about smart data, and in particular, this gap between what the user needs and wants and what's available from the information providers. And then we heard those levels from Cord, machine readability, machine actionability, and how we're moving to a much more granular from the single document into sentences and beyond. And he finished with saying, whatever it is has to be usable or easy to use for the users. And that's very much what I heard from Simon. Somehow, all the stakeholders in this market need to get together and figure out how do we make it easy, not just for the providers, but for the users themselves, because that's really what we want. We need easy licensing, easy access, access to everything all of the time. I love it. Okay, thank you very much. We're going to do a breakout. Your question, your task in the breakout is really, having heard this sort of future vision, three different perspectives on the future workflow. What's holding us back? Well, why is this not happening right now? So if you could go into your breakouts, Haley will give the note in a moment for Haley to put you into breakouts, and just try and discuss together in 10 minutes what's holding us back from doing this right now. Why is it happening more slowly than perhaps some people would like? So thank you very much, and I'll see you back in 10 minutes. Okay, I think that's it. Everyone's back. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great conversation in the breakout. And now it's really time to hear from all of you. I'm going to stop sharing the screen so that I can actually see everyone. Two ways to interact. We've had a couple of questions already, which I'll ask the panelists in a moment. But if you'd like to say something, then please raise your hand and we'll unmute you, and feel free to ask or comment, or just chat and we'll pick it up if you prefer, just to do it by chat. And we really do want to hear from you. I'm very interested to hear how the discussions went and your responses. So just before we went for a breakout, we had a comment from Ivan Salcedo. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. And he's saying that, as Cord said, the hyper-personalization that Tatjana identified as a megatrend actually depends quite a bit on the effort from the standards bodies to add structure, semantics, and quality to their content, which has a lot of impact on all sorts of areas. And he was looking forward to hearing views on the outcomes of that, the pathways. So how do we get to that? How do we get to that position from standards organizations? Would that something, Cord? Would you like to answer Ivan on that and see where we go?
Yes, of course, it requires a lot of investment in such technologies, as Ivan is certainly aware. There is always the question whether you get a return on investment in that. If you really start investing into new technology, will the customer pick it up? I'm pretty sure, I'm convinced they will in the future. But developing such infrastructures is a costly endeavor, and I would highly recommend that standards bodies or standards organizations work together on standardized ways of providing such kind of information to the customers, because our customers will be expecting from us to deliver them with information in the same way as, for example, another standards organization does, or in a similar format. So we need to talk about standardization of content delivery, or maybe even services. I know that's a very general answer. That's my take on that.
Great. So we need standards for standards. Thank you. Tatiana or Simon?
Yeah, we talked about in our group that there is a risk of breaking up the standards into semantic tokens, and that can become quite risky. And how to handle copyright and user right and all that, it becomes a granular approach has some inherent risks, and that is quite exciting actually to talk about and explore.
Well, back to hyper-personalization, it represents an investment. There's no doubt about it. But also what we have encountered, even in the wider digital publishing space, even outside of engineering solutions providers, companies are often sitting on quite a bit of user data that they're making little use of, because it also represents an investment. And that would be a good place to start. And it will apply across the board. It will apply to standards developers. It will apply to academic publishers, or even to companies that have, well, customer bases. That will provide a lot of fodder for that hyper-personalization that I've mentioned. It just means that you understand your user very well, much better than now. And you're also tracking sort of their journey and their interaction with your content. Will mean different things to different companies depending on their level of maturity. In the end, the user will be in a better position to discover the content, to use the content. So will standards publishers have to face like the immediate future of very, very granular content pipeline that they have to serve to their users? We really don't know. Back to Simon's points. Users may or may not be ready for it in 5 years' time. But we're pretty convinced at Outsell that if you want to be in business 10 years down the road, you have to start doing it now, because the rest of the world is not waiting. And the larger trends that I've mentioned, they do exist, whether you respond to them or not, and they're sort of pushing the entire industry forward. So unfortunately, it's a burden, it's an investment, it's a task, it's something to be addressed. Muting myself.
Absolutely correct. I'm so sorry. I just took the word, Jonathan. I think that's very, very well spotted. We talked also about Googleization and how to avoid piracy, and hyper-personalization is also a risk in that it can create a serendipity bubble, right? So serendipity will sort of fly. So you are presented to what the algorithm will sort of know about you, and that's it. So, and that's the issue with Google, right? It's the bubble, personal bubble you're in. You're presented to what you like always, and you're not presented for anything else except if you're really curious and serendipitous. So I think that's an issue that needs to be addressed also. And it could also be that we end up falling on that document-centric might be a good way to do this, because there is some stability needed for the document when working in projects, when applying to different, like a bridge or a tunnel that takes like 10, 20 years, right? And have standards that is always developing and always changing. I mean, what's up and down here? And that can become an issue for developing the world and creating a sustainable society. around us. So that can become a blockage also. So we need to address that issue also. So there's risks involved. And of course, there's cost involved, as you said, Tatjana and Cord. It is expensive to do stuff like this, and very much expensive to do it yourself. So I think there's money to be made in cooperating also here.
Thank you. We have Udo May has hand raised. Would you like to unmute and
thank you.
Please.
I only want to say I talked in the breaking session with Christian. I hope it's the right spelling. And another colleague, and he asked if there are the opportunity to have a meeting to talk if colleagues are already right for level 4, Mr. or Cord had talking about. And that is, please contact me. That's only when there you would be set up a meeting. Then please contact me. So that's I had no chance in the breaking meeting to answer.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So I just wanted to follow up on the earlier discussion with between Tatjana and Simon. So I think I'm understanding a picture here of there has to be change and it's going to be difficult, it's going to require risk. And I just wonder about the risk of not changing. We've seen in other areas where a disruptor comes in, somebody we're not expecting, someone who isn't part of the current market and comes in and disrupts. Is that something you think could happen here? And who might that be? Is it something
Definitely.
that Mm-hmm.
Definitely. I mean, when you isolate a publisher within a portal or within its own sort of milieu, and it becomes difficult to create aggregations or sort of middlemen to the user to use those sort of solutions, it becomes devalued. If the market devalues a certain publisher, it becomes devalued, and it doesn't really it becomes less used in the projects, and there's preferred standard bodies that is used, and I think that's a very sad way to go down. I think the diversity of standard organization and development that is going on right now is excellent. And I think it's perfect because there's a lot of national activity and there is a lot of subject field activity. And I think that is very good. And also I see some cross-border activity going on. I think that's also very nice. So I'm all for that. But yeah, there are risks. There are very much risk. I don't think it's unsolvable, but of course we have to look at it.
Maybe if I may answer or reply to the same question, there is certainly a risk that if we do not move as standards developing organizations and don't make our standards more intelligent or more smart, as we call it, and the services that can be built upon them, that we will become at some point in time irrelevant because users won't be able to use our content anymore, so they go to another standard setting organization who do deliver the content in the way they need it. And so yes, there's a high risk, of course, and that's one of the reasons why even at the international level, but also at the national level, the standards bodies are developing new ways of distributing, new ways of presenting standards content, always in line with the market they serve. Many of the SDOs, at least in Germany and in Europe, they serve their national markets. But of course, there's industry markets which are served by SDOs, and so all of us, we are listening to what our customers say and try to stay relevant for them and the usages they have for the standards content. So it has to be done. I don't speculate on anybody who would be willing to take over the whole standards industry and work as a sole provider of content and information for all of the standards developing organizations. But you have to be aware that there are certain threats of becoming irrelevant. Yes, absolutely. To agree.
I just wanted to add that there is a risk from the actual customer base, the one that I referred to in my kind of opening remarks. Customers creating workarounds, creating that value that publishers could have delivered to them, creating that value in-house, and actually not wanting anything that is value priced from publishers anymore. And that's an opportunity missed for publishers, especially in the long run. It may not be a huge chunk of the publisher's revenue at the moment, but it's definitely kind of nibbling at the margins and bringing overall devaluing, as Simon said, devaluing the entire offering more and more. So that's the real risk, and it's creeping. It won't be overnight. Well, it will be overnight, but not right now. It has the ability to creep up on those players that are complacent, unfortunately. So that's the risk that I would like to highlight, not from an external disruptor, but actually from within the market and from within your own customer base.
That is a very, very, very well spoken, Tatiana, and a very real risk. I see it in my customers, in my organization. It's happening all the time.
So you mentioned, whoever raised their hands, I can't see. So we had a note on value. Todd, I don't know if you'd like to talk to this, but you did mention there was a discussion in your breakout group of the difference. If you're sharing chunks of content, that's fine on a granular basis, but what's the value of those single chunks, and how do you retain the value in this granular world? Do I summarize that correctly, Todd?
Sorry, too many mutes. Yeah, I think this goes to what Tatiana was saying in terms of the value for an STO and the elements of the value proposition of distributing the content. What's the value of one definition or one calculation in a standard? It somewhat depends. If that calculation is keeping the engine attached to my airline, that's a really important calculation, and I want them to get it right. And no offense, Jonathan, if a DOI number is incorrectly calculated, is that going to be the end of the world? From a NISA perspective, we sell that information standard. We want them, actually, we don't even sell it. We give them away for free. But the value proposition, I think that's one of the inhibitors of moving us towards smart standards, is how do we as a community support the content creation process, which is time consuming and expensive and challenging. But if we're slicing and dicing it, chunking it up and distributing it to the user community, the business model gets very tenuous if your business model is driven on the sale of standards. And Anthony, I saw that your hand was up.
Sure. I was going to say, I mentioned in my group that it almost feels like the evolution of using cash and checks and debit cards, right? Being able to allow a consumer or a user the options becomes about their preference. And if you even think about it further, sometimes I can go to the grocery store and I can use a debit card, and I can also get cash out. So I'm using it in multiple ways. And I think it's just the ability to make sure that people are doing what they prefer to do with the information and the platform. And I think sometimes what happens is technology pushes us, but we all aren't at the same page at the same time. And I think that's part of the challenge of where we are with some of the technology as it relates to standards developers and also the aggregators as well. They want to give information, but everyone where they're providing the information to may not all be on the same page. You may have someone who wants cash, you may have someone who wants a check, and you may have someone who wants to use the debit card. And I think that's the diversity of the base, and being able to meet that need becomes a challenge for everyone.
Thank you very much. So we've got about 7 minutes to go, and I was conscious of the time. I don't want to run over time. Thank you very much, Anthony, for that. So maybe we could ask the panelists just for in like one sentence to say, well, how do you, we're talking about the workshop of the future. Could you describe in one sentence, one soundbite, your ideal future? Who'd like to go first?
In terms of workflows, in terms of information availability.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, we will have reliable data first and foremost, and the data that we need over the data that's just available, free, or the data we may want. So highly relevant, reliable data. That's in an ideal world. And it's going to be data. It's not going to be a narrative format anymore. It's going to be chunks of, it's going to be a different format. So how fast this world will happen, we don't know, but it's coming. It's coming.
Great, thank you. Cord?
Well, in an ideal world, we'll sell high quality data, just as Tatjana said, because I think quality is the USP for the standards bodies, quality and reliability. We'll be selling data, but also documents. There will be people reading documents. You cannot discount that. And we'll have new channels of providing our information to customers we don't know yet, because, for example, somebody who builds an app uses some parts of standards information or content of standards to the benefit of the users of that app. And we will, of course, try to generate income from that. So new ways of providing our information, high quality information to users, and not losing the present ones, of course.
Great, thank you. And Simon, last word from you.
One sentence it was.
Yes.
That's difficult, man. I'd say the most important thing is open cooperation, where the value flows through the entire ecosystem, both ways. That's it.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you very much. So we're almost at our end. I'm going to hand over to our host, Andrew, just to close out. And but before I do that, thank you, everyone, for your contributions. Thank you very, very much to the panelists, particularly Simon, who was, you don't know what he did to get there, to sit there on time. There was a storm in Denmark and he survived the storm to be there on time. So thank you. Thank you, Tatjana. Thank you, Cord. Andrew, over to you.
Thank you, Jonathan, and also thank you, Cord, thank you, Simon, thank you, Tatjana. That was a wonderful conversation, and I think it's a conversation we need to continue. There's definitely a role here for the marketplace to come together and to carry on. I think we talked about innovation in business models and how we can work with content in different ways. We talked. Cord put up his maturity model, or the IC10 Ivan's maturity model, and I think we're still in many ways stuck on level 2, and many other parts of the publishing world are on 3, and maybe even they think they're on 4. We're existing in a world of network content, of everything with PIDs, of the exchange of data, of the ability to use graph databases, navigate up and down and find utility in content that's there and happening in other sectors of publishing. And I think really, we need to see this happening in standards. And perhaps that is an innovation in business model. Perhaps that is a way of working with rights and copyrights in a slightly different way. At the same time, that we understand the investment that's required from the originators of content to be able to create it, distribute it, structure it, and deliver this in ways that people can interact with and interoperate, and clearly want to return on that. So this is happening in other parts of the publishing market too. And so I think this is a conversation. This is an area that we need to continue having this. And I think look to CCC for the next edition of this. We'll be in touch. We'll be following it up with materials. And if you want to take part in this conversation, if you want to communicate with us, then send us plenty of comments and send us ideas and send us your remarks. Thank you very much indeed. And CCC is delighted to have hosted this wonderful conversation. Thank you.